you guys, it's me, Crystal, and as you can tell from the title of this video, I'm talking about books today. So at the beginning of the year, I made a goal to read 60 books this year, which is a lot of books for me to read in a year, and I don't remember the last time I read 60 books in a year, but as of the end of this month, as soon as I finish the book I'm currently reading, which will be done by the end of the month, because it's only a couple hundred pages and I'm halfway through, so when I finish that book, I will be exactly on target for my reading goal. I would have read 40 books so far this year, and if you break down the 20 books that I have left over the next 4 months, that's 5 books a month. So reading 5 books a month is a lot more than it sounded in my head when I made this goal. So I decided to dedicate September to kind of getting ahead of my reading goal a little bit, because one of my goals this year was to read the entire Twilight series. I had never read it. I did watch all the movies, I think, about 5 years ago, but I never read the books, and so I'm halfway through the series and the books just keep getting longer. And so I figured this will help me get that series finished, because I figured any month that, like the month I read Eclipse, for example, I'm probably not going to get 4 other books read that month. So anyway, I wanted to get a little bit ahead, and yeah. So the books on my September TBR, they're not like all super long, and so it seems really doable in my head. So here's a list of all the books I want to read, and I'll also go through them, of course. And so I have an ebook, an audiobook, and then the rest are physical books. So I'll do the ebook first, and that is Read by Tiffany Reese, I think. And I don't have the book in front of me, but you'll see it right here. And I don't know exactly what this book is about. What I can tell so far from what I read, it's about this woman who is running this art gallery that's severely in debt, and this guy comes in and he's like, hey, I'll give you money to sleep with me, or something like that. And so it has a paranormal aspect to it. I don't know how the paranormal aspect comes into play. The guy has some supernatural abilities that I can tell so far, where it seems like he can just show up and then disappear. But that's all I know about the book. I don't remember what the blurb said exactly, because I picked this up a couple months ago or a few months ago. I just thought that it sounded interesting. The reviews were good, and it's also like something that's a little different than what I normally read, and so I thought it would be fun to read something a little different. Anyway, so the audiobook I'm reading is the Steve Jobs biography by Walter Isaacson. I also have a physical book, but I'm listening to the ebook because, come on, like, this is super long. So the audiobook is, I'll just hold this up. So the audiobook is 25 hours long, and I am currently 5 hours into it, so I only have 20 hours left. I'm thinking I will probably get done with the book next month, but if I don't, it's not a big deal. It'll get done eventually, but my goal is to finish the audiobook. So next on the list, I have this contemporary fantasy, Song of the Dryad by Natalia Lee. She is an author tuber, so I will link her channel below. And I don't know what this book is about, which is kind of a theme for a lot of the books that I have on my September TBR. This kind of happens. I pick up books either based on the cover or based on who the author is. I'm sure I read the blurb and it sounded interesting, but I don't really remember what the book was about. But it's contemporary fantasy, and it's not that long. So next I have this poetry book, Pillow Thoughts 3, Mending the Mind by Courtney Peppernell. I also read Pillow Thoughts 1 and Pillow Thoughts 2 earlier this year. So this came out, I think, earlier this month, and so I picked it up. And this is not that long, and poetry isn't super difficult to read. So the next I have this middle grade book. I have no idea what this is about. This guy makes fun, like, short videos that look like he's, magic or something. So I follow him on Instagram. Like, he'll have, like, a car driving down the street, and then, like, he'll pluck it off the street, and it'll be, like, a little toy car in his hand. Like, he does stuff like that. And so I saw him talking about this book on Instagram. There's a few other books in the series, but it comes with an app, and it makes the pictures, like, in like 3D, and I haven't started reading this book yet, so I don't know how that works, but it sounded really fun, and you know, I wanted to check his book out. So it's like a book with like words and then pictures, and then you hover the app over it and the pictures like come to life and do something. It sounds exciting. It's longer than I thought it was going to be. But it's middle grade, and middle grade doesn't usually take that long to read. But I don't know what this book is about. Only that this guy, his family is like magical, but he hasn't done anything magical yet. So I'm thinking over the course of the story, he's going to do something magical. Anyway, it sounds like fun. So, and obviously, as you can tell, my reading tastes are all over the place. So next, I have this graphic novel, Snow Glass Apples by Neil Gaiman and Colleen Doran. Or Duran. So I have his other like fairy tale graphic novel. It's called The Sleeper and the Spindle, and it's really weird, but I really liked it, and so I bought this as soon as it came out. And it's looks like this is also really weird, and it looks like it's not really appropriate for children, but as I like retellings and I like graphic novels and I like Neil Gaiman, of course I'm going to read this, and obviously I don't care if the content is dubious, you know, obviously. So I don't really know what this book is about. I'm assuming it's Snow White. But Sleeper and the Spindle, it was like it was Sleeping Beauty, but I was pretty sure that the main character in there was Snow White. They never called her Snow White, but it just sounded like it was Snow White. It's like that one was Snow White and Sleeping Beauty, and then this one looks like it's Snow White. I don't think I read the blurb, but it doesn't matter. So the last 4 books on my list are all in the same theme, which is why I saved them for last. So the first one I'm going to talk about is this one. It's a little book of poisons, potions, and aphrodisiacs, and it is by the Duchess of Northumberland, which is in Scotland, and it kind of has a format like this, where it has, I guess, some kind of recipe, and there are like pictures on some of the pages, so it shouldn't take that long to read, but it's pretty small book, like it's a pretty thin book. It's about the size of my hand, and I bought this mostly because of the cover, but I also bought this because I was buying another book by her, and then I saw this one and decided to get this one too. Both of these books were really hard to find. This one, according to Amazon, I got like the last copy that they had in stock. So this one I got used, which it came in really good shape, but I don't know if this book is out of print or not. But anyway, so I read this fiction book called The Poison Diaries by Mary Rose Wood, written, like kind of co-authored by the Duchess of Northumberland. And so this book, it's kind of like the same story, but like a different version of the same story. I don't really know. I'm pretty sure this book came out first, but it's like illustrated, and it has this kind of handwriting font. I don't know. I don't think it's like a children's picture book, but I like the Poison Diaries novel, and so I saw this. This is huge, you can tell. So I saw this and decided I wanted to read it. And while I was at it, I decided to pick this book up too. And so I have these books, and I think this is like history and like non-fiction, but it's not like an in-depth like poison guide. And this is fiction with like some real tidbits thrown in throughout the narrative. And there's a character in here who's mentioned in the Poison Diaries novel, which is why I think it's kind of like a different version of the same story, because I think maybe Mary Rose Wood was inspired by this to write a book, and so they wrote a book together. But speaking of the Poison Diaries, I'm finally going to read the sequel, which is the Poison Diaries and Nightshade, and it's not that long. The pacing in the first book is pretty slow, but I read this through a few of the reviews, and it said the pacing of this one is faster. I do know how this book ends because I read some spoiler reviews because I was like super on the fence, but I decided I wanted to read it, and what better time to read it than when I'm reading a bunch of other poison books. And speaking of comprehensive poison guides, Amazon recommended this, which is Wicked Plants by Amy Stewart. This has like a lot of different plants in them, and like plants that are harmless in small doses, and like what their like poisonous doses are, and then like super poisonous plants. And so obviously I write paranormal, so sometimes you want to poison somebody in your paranormal book. And I have a story where the poison that I'm using in that story currently is in here. And so I might change the poison though, depending on how this read goes. But if I keep the poison, then I have a quick reference guide to that poison, so I don't have to Google it again, because that was honestly kind of tedious, trying to find the right poison that would kill somebody in the time frame that I needed to kill them, with the symptoms that I needed them to have. And so I also have another idea or two with a character who's dabbling in poisons, and so I thought this would be fun to read, because I want to read through the whole book and like just get a general idea of what's in here so that I can find stuff faster when I need it. And I also thought it would be fun to read in general. So those are the books that are on my September to be read list, and honestly it seems pretty doable. I mean, if I leave out the biography, since I'm listening to the audiobook, these are all the physical books that are on the TBR, and it really doesn't seem like that many books when I consider that some of these books will be read all the way through in half a day or something. But I'm excited about them, and I'll probably report back on how I did. And if I read all these books and listen to that book, that will be an entire month ahead of my goal, which will be really exciting. I actually started off the year really good. I read 9 books in January and 9 books in February, and so I was like way ahead of my reading goal and just having like an absolute blast. And then I got to April and I like read a book that I was all that crazy about, and then it happened again in May, and it kind of like killed my reading mojo, and so things down a lot. And then I was doing some writing. I do read while I'm writing, but obviously if I'm writing a lot, then that cuts into some of my reading time. But anyway, I'm excited about my September TBR and wanted to share. And that's all for this video, and I will see you guys in the next video. Hope you had a great August, and I will see you next month.